Bonjour, hello to everyone that's joining. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from, how you're doing today. You can even share what program you might be working on for this session. So my name is Bissy. I'm here from Research Impact Canada, based at York University. And I'm joined here by my colleague Sandy. And we're also joined by our partners at the Future Skills Center. And finally, we're joined by our key presenter for today. Her name is Laurene Williams, who's a program manager from Diversity Institute. So as we're waiting for folks to kind of come in, I'll actually start with a land acknowledgement. So you can also, I invite you to share your own land acknowledgement in the chat. So I acknowledge that I'm joining you from York University, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, the Métis, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. And even though we are gathered here virtually, I do encourage you to reflect on and acknowledge the land that you may be joining us from. And hopefully we have some diversity in terms of where in Canada you're joining us from. And so again, for those who are just joining, my name is Bissy. I'm here from Research Impact Canada, and I'm here with my colleague Sandy Chan, our partners from the Future Skills Center, and once again, our lovely presenter, Laurene Williams from Diversity Institute. So for today's session, over the next about 90 minutes, we're going to be discussing advancing inclusion and learning with Black communities in Canada. So we're going to hear about really great work that's being done to ensure that Black youth have the support they need to find and keep meaningful work opportunities. They're aligned with their skills and their career aspirations. And so Laurene, our presenter, will really focus on learning from the Advanced Digital and Professional Training Program. So it's called ADAPT. It's a program for Black youth, which focuses on developing skills for success, including digital competencies. So if this is your first time joining us for a peer learning group, basically the goal of a peer learning group is to facilitate conversations around a discussion topic. So the presentation we're going to hear from Laurene is really going to set the context. And then we want to, spend the next majority of the time actually giving you, our guests, the opportunity to share your insights, your experiences, and also share resources that you may have and learn from other people. So we invite you to participate in the chat throughout the session. There's going to be closed captioning available for the session as well, which can be activated by clicking the icon in the Zoom toolbar. We also have French interpretation available for today's session. So if you would like to participate in French, there is a setting that you can by clicking below on the globe icon in the toolbar, and that will help you with getting into the French section. So after the presentation, we're going to be going into a facilitated discussion. I think depending on how many people we actually have, we usually like to do breakout rooms. The session before the breakout room is going to be recorded, but the breakout rooms will not be if we end up going into them. And then again, I will be actually turning over to Laurene in a minute, but we're going to have her present a bit of a Q&A as a main group, and then again, looking into a breakout room. And we have a discussion question that we're going to bring to you right now, and then we'll bring it back after the presentation. And the discussion question is around, what innovative models or partnerships have you seen that advance inclusion and equity for Black communities in the skills and workforce development area? So again, I encourage you to keep this question in mind as you're listening to Laurene's presentation. And, again, feel free to drop thoughts, share resources, or anything that kind of sparks your information. So now I will hand it over to Laurene to walk us through her presentation. We're just going to have a moment to switch over slides and then spotlight Laurene so she can take it away.
Awesome. All right, so welcome everyone again. My name is Laurene Williams, and I'm a lawyer and a program manager at Diversity Institute. And I support a number of work integrated learning programs and initiatives. So today's presentation For those who don't know, it takes off from my colleague Nancy, who spoke on June 3rd. And I'm going to share a little bit more about, in particular, programs and iterations of our advanced digital and professional skills training program, honing in particularly on the Adapt Your Black Youth program, to showcase how we've seen the advancement and inclusion of Black participants and how we've worked with community partners to achieve program participant and community success. So on the next slide, I have a little bit of an agenda. You'll see that I have a little bit of context setting. So I'll talk about a little bit more about what Diversity Institute does, understanding the digital skills market. We'll talk holistically on the ADAPT model, and then look at the Adapt for Black Youth program and advancing EDI for employers and partners. And if we have time, we'll look at what's in store for Adapt for the future. So next, so to frame today's presentation, I want to start off by saying that here at the Diversity Institute, we're grounded in what we call or consider as action-oriented research. And so we partner to deliver a number of impactful programs that focus on and advance job creation, inclusion, and diversity, along with entrepreneurship. So we are focusing on what works, for whom it will work, and how we can really innovate, replicate, and scale our best practices. And this applies to our programming, which you'll hear me speak about today. The key consideration is that we are able to mobilize and scale quickly to provide training on the in-demand digital skills, both for employers on EDI training and upskilling and reskilling training for participants. So on the next slide, I want to share a little bit more on the understanding the digital skills market. It looks like I may have missed a slide there, but just setting the framework for the work that we do and how we determine, the skills that we want to provide or include in our upskilling program. So if you look at the digital skills market, we understand that over 250,000 jobs right now need to be filled. So that totals over 2.6 million digital skills workers in Canada, and this needs to be done by 2025. We've also identified that access to talent and digital skills remains a challenge in virtually every sector. Representation of equity deserving groups is uneven, while some racialized people are also overrepresented, and this is partially due to the heavy reliance on highly skilled newcomers, sometimes international students, while others remain underrepresented, and notably, these groups would be Indigenous peoples, women, and of course, Black peoples. Now, while digital skills are often associated with STEM, there's an increasing demand for those who can apply technology to meet organizational needs, as well as basic digital literacy skills and use of applications. And so even when we think about artificial intelligence on the next slide, and when we think about barriers to artificial adoption, we also see that a lack of knowledge about the different options that are available, lack of understanding of what technology tools may be a good fit, concerns about data privacy and security are some of the barriers to the Canadian small and medium-sized businesses adopting and utilizing these kind of digital tools in their workforce. We also see that for Canadian businesses that are just starting to explore AI implementation, challenges such as technology integration, limited AI expertise, and a lack of AI governance were listed as the main barriers. On the flip side, so while employers are a bit slow to adopt AI, we've seen that there's an increase in work-related AI use through employee reporting. And significantly in 2024, a survey revealed that about 39, so 39 in 2024 racialized individuals noted they were using AI, and in 2025 that number jumped to 46%. So what we're seeing here is that there's an increased uptake in AI program use by Canadian workers. However, many of them remain untrained in the use of this technology, and only a third have received training from their employer. So what these stats reveal, it points to a gap in employee training, which will then lead to things like various AI misuse, hazards resulting from ignorance of AI hallucinations, use of private company data in public models, and so on. And so work-related AI training would inform employees of the possible use of artificial intelligence while increasing the potential return on investment of the technology. And so looking at the next slide and what are AI and digital skills, this is always a common thing that we look to understand. Like, what are the digital skills and what's considered as such for employers? So there's an important difference between skills, techniques, and tools, and significant issues around measurement and comparisons. There isn't a common definition, and so this undermines the ability of job seekers to communicate their skills in relation to what employers are looking for when you look at their their job ads and that sort of thing. And this really at its core undermines and hinders an employer's understanding and communication of the skills that they need. So this slide right here really speaks to 3 levels of depth to digital skills and the varying needs of these skills within the workplace. So starting from basic literacy, like understanding and using Microsoft Office, to having business and technology skills, which is the capacity to really innovate and use digital technologies. The third is deep technology skills, content creation, which really implies a deep knowledge of digital skills and technologies to help develop and create digital media. So if you really look at what companies want, it's really these basic skills at this point. So we really need to figure out a way around this. So as a result of not having a common skills framework, our research has demonstrated that there's a misunderstanding about what digital skills are actually required from most job seekers. And the key note here is that employers, if you're not able to articulate the digital skills that you need, will continue to see this skills gap. And to put things in further context for you, just looking on the next slide, we see that the skills gap is really costing the Canadian economy billions of dollars. And so often by many small and medium-sized businesses. So next is a slide, the State of Black Economics Report. And I really want to touch on this right here because this report kind of contextualizes a lot of the things that, we've spoken about in terms of the skills gap. And we're going to be looking at the upskilling programs. And we see that when designing programs and training initiatives for Black Canadians, it's important that you're equipping Black Canadians with the resources and the supports at every stage in the talent pipeline. So whether it's from education to employment, support throughout the employment process, and also working with employers and stakeholders. This report offers a perspective on how important it really is that training programs are representative of the communities that they serve and that they are culturally responsive responsive. And the Adapt for Black Youth program, which I'll speak about, is a case study on advancing inclusion for Black communities in Canada. So next, now before I speak to the Adapt for Black Youth program, to put things in perspective, we have on the next slide an overview of the foundation of this program, the model, which we refer to as the Advanced Digital and Professional Skills Training, or ADAPT Core model. Now, this is a employer-centered work-integrated learning program, and it provides skills training and wraparound support, and it's been in operation since 2014 along with variants. The main thing for ADAPT is that we're providing free access to early talent, and we're giving these participants an opportunity to over 70 plus hours of training. And we've had various iterations of this, and the training is really designed to teach best practices and in-demand skills within the Canadian labor market. So I spoke about issues a short while ago on the AI adoption barriers and some of the other digital skills needs. And so all of our programs are really seeking to reflect what the learnings from our research are, and how can we break this down to make it accessible both for participants and for employers. And we measure our ADAPT programs based on the number of participants that we have reached. And we will see that the program's growth really demonstrates and indicates how positive this program model is, and really the focus of it, and that is doing what it's supposed to do, is to not just train people for imaginary jobs, as my academic director loves to say, but to train people for actual jobs that there is a demonstrated need for. No, next slide. These are it's a snapshot of some of the employers and partners we've worked with. And on the next slide, just looking on inclusive career pathing and wraparound support, we've noted that really and truly participants' needs are going to vary depending on their situation and goals. And so an important aspect of our programs is focusing on skills development and inclusive career pathing. The emphasis is on the importance of wraparound supports for our programs, making sure that the skills development actually help and lead to positive employment outcomes. We all know that if you're from a diverse population or underrepresented group, they're going to face additional challenges around employment gaps, pay gaps, occupational segregation, underrepresentation. You know, people, for example, who have foreign sounding last names, come from immigrant backgrounds, are less likely to be called for interviews. We see where Black people will have the same post-secondary education levels, but then still have some of the highest rates of underemployment in university graduates. And this is really why micro-credentialing and digital learning can come in as an alternative form to non-traditional education. And this is really the crux of what our programs do, is providing alternate means to and pathways into the workforce through micro-credentialing and macro credentials, including recognition of prior learning, ensuring that the programs are tailored. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And so overall, the program iterations for ADAPT, which, I'll share on the next slide, we see that we're able to tailor the ADAPT program model, or the core program model, to reflect the needs of diverse groups. So whether it's ADAPT for newcomers, whether it's ADAPT for success, ADAPT for Black youth, all of these programs are looking at specific specific training, wraparound supports, tailored wraparound supports, recognizing really that different groups experience different barriers and combination of barriers, and need additional supports in order to succeed. Next, I'll share that just on the next slide, this brief chart on skills increase in Black youth. Now, over all of our programs, we have had Black participants and Black youth engaging in these, whether it's through Adapt Core, Adapt for Success, Adapt for Black youth, of course, Adapt for newcomers. And one of the consistent themes from these various programs are that, the findings that coming through these programs, they are demonstrating improvements in several key skill areas. Career planning also showed significant improvement for Black youth. And this consistent score reflects successful engagement with career planning, demonstrating an ability to effectively navigate and improve career-related fields during the program. In digital skills in particular, Black youth experience a notable increase from intake average of maybe 2.74 to exit of average of 3.0. And this is particularly significant, highlighting their growth and increased proficiency in digital skills over the course of the program. And it really underscores, the effectiveness of the program in boosting digital competencies among Black youth. So now to the Adapt for Black Youth program. Like I said, we've had a number of program on the next slide, number of program iterations. However, we launched a program targeting Black youth in Ontario in 2022. And that program, it was funded by the Ontario's provincial government. And the aim was really to support Black youth to develop the skills that they need to succeed in today's digital economy, ensuring that they are provided these critical skills and opportunities in a culturally responsive way. So from program design to program end, there is a intentionality around building in some of those responsive supports, representation, and cultural reflection in the activities that are engaged. Now, at the end of this program, students will receive a badge to signify completion. And I am very happy and pleased to say that to date, we've met or exceeded all of our program metrics over the course of this program. No, on the next slide, just to want to put things in perspective in terms of our impact. Since the program launched in 2022, we have trained over 380 participants. We have placed over 320 participants. And anecdotally, even though the program wasn't necessarily focused on entrepreneurship, many have gone on to launch businesses and also secured promotional opportunities as well. And our participants have consistently reported their positive experiences, highlighting how they've developed or improved the new skills as a result of engaging in the training. In particular, when we look at the employer side of things and the importance of partnerships, employers, many of whom we engage with for this program, are small and medium-sized businesses or SMEs, and many of them are Black owned, and they have been very keen to support the program because of the social impacts and the benefits. And we've also integrated employer participation in the program model, where employers are able to do drop-in program sessions, participate in networking events. So it really brings the employer, removes that layer of you're over there and I am here as a participant, but kind of brings it a little bit closer so that participants have this opportunity to engage with potential employers as part of the program, who sometimes and often hire back from our participant pipeline. And employers have shared that in surveys, post-placement surveys that we've done, they've shared how 85% of these employers noted that as a result of providing work placements, their organizations improve their business outcomes. For example, they've reached new talent pools and increased employment and retention of diverse employees. And significantly, 92.3% indicated that participants either exceeded or met their expectations, with all of the employers who responded to our surveys saying that, you know, they would hire back or engage with our program in again. And so it's really important for this program to really engage with Black-led, Black-serving employers and organizations, community partners to help to amplify this program, because that's really where we've seen the most support in seeing it as almost like giving back to the community. So next slide. Just, you know, honing in on that impact with employers more generally. The keys to our program success across the board has really been the evidence-based skills training. We're not going and training people for skills that are not in demand, that are not needed. We've done the research, we have highlighted that these are the key skills that are needed, and we're constantly you know, improving our training models and offerings to ensure that people are getting trained for the jobs that are, or skills that are in demand. We've also been able to customize and tailor the training rapidly based on movements in you know, how things advance in society, particularly as I've mentioned, artificial intelligence is a big piece of training now. And also introducing systems for online learning, because you recognize that, you know, one size really does not fit all. So we have to offer asynchronous options, hybrid options. Sometimes we've done in-person learning streams just to ensure that we're able to reach people in different areas. Another key item is program partnerships, and this is critical. Each partner, if we're, you know, looking to reach remote regions, like for Adapt Your Black Youth program, we've worked with partners in Windsor, in Thunder Bay, in Kingston, in these smaller regions to ensure that we're able to reach more rural communities. And so by working with Black serving partners, establishing relationships with local organizations in these spaces, we're able to reach a broader cross-section of communities. And then we've also worked with partners like Tech Nation. I believe I saw Madison here. We've worked with partners like Tech Nation to offer wage subsidies to employers. We've also, in our program itself, from time to time, set aside funding to assist employers from program funds access to wage subsidies. That is a very big component of being able to support employers as well financially. Many of the small and medium-sized businesses do not have the resources to hire as much or as many candidates that they would like to, and so offering these financial incentives is one way that we are able to continue to invest in the human capital of employers and also participants as well. And, you know, we've worked with a number of larger organizations as well through My Starter, working actively with Home Depot, Bell, and other organizations to really bring a broader lens as well, and network to bring opportunities to participants, particularly when they're not able to. And so I think one of the key pieces I'd say about employer engagements and community partner engagements is the fact that a number of the participants in our programs don't already have networks. And so the ability for us to be that middleman to say, you know, break down this wall preventing people from accessing employers, identifying opportunities. Our career coaches and work placement, job placement, staff really do a lot of work in matching talent to employer needs, and then, wraparound support. So through the Adapt Your Black Youth program, we wanted to ensure that there was diverse representation, and that really started from not only representation from a program side of things and the administration side of things, but also extending to our instructors, the mentors that we would match, ensuring that there's a diverse representation of backgrounds, industries, in matching these Black youth to other successful Black leaders. And then one-on-one coaching critical, mentorship, career development support, including resume review, interview prep, access to the Magnets platform, job search platform. We've also worked with partners to offer laptops, because some areas of Ontario or Canada don't have reliable access to the internet, that sort of thing. So we've really looked at ensuring that we're removing as much barriers as possible for our participants. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time, but just want to quickly go to the next slide and just share, so you can see some of the testimonials from employers and participants. And we've really put, as I've mentioned, a lot of effort into curating our programs so that they're culturally sensitive and really epitomizes the concept that if you can't see it, you can't be it. And so we are very intentional in working with Black-led businesses and organizations, as they really are the ones who are continuing to hire from our programs, and will offer mentorship opportunities, engage in networking initiatives, and that sort of thing. So we see that with participants, we will hear words like, empowering. They'll say that the program was incredible. Even things like their imposter syndrome, how by seeing representation, they are no longer, they're more confident in navigating the job market. And the one, I'll just read this one thing from one of my most recent participants, Christian, who shared that because he was one individual who did not, during the funded period, secure an employment opportunity. However, after the funded period, he wrote back to share that he secured an internship and highlighted the importance of the SEO workshop as an example that really is helping him in his current role. So we really see that, the impacts of this program, and not just from a participant perspective, we are also seeing the impacts from employers as well, in that many employers have found the program to have helped them to obtain the resources and supports that they need, helping them to cultivate a continuous learning culture. I mentioned that a number of the employers that we engage are actually small and medium-sized businesses, so they don't have the resources to have an entire learning and development section in their HR units, if they even have a HR departments. And so we basically would be seen as outsourcing this, providing these kind of critical training needs for them, and working with them as well to customize the training and the offering so that it's responsive to employer needs and in-demand skills. So what are we learning from these programs? There needs to be, at the end of the day, customizable training. We have to work with local businesses, employers, Even though SMEs are generally positive in hiring talent, many of them lack the capacity in hiring and investing in the workforce and training. And this is where employer supports comes in, including, matching the talent, helping with the review of candidates, helping with providing access to wage subsidies or other financial resources. And just ensuring that the offerings that we're providing are also useful for them, so that the training is reflective of the skills that are needed in this kind of economy. And also that upskilling supports are adaptable and customizable. So I want to quickly close out by just referring to different tools that we've offered to some of our and all of our employer and partners and community organizations, because we recognize that organizations, generally want to make a commitment to improving their diversity and inclusion, that they may not really know how or where to start. And it's demonstrated that a diverse workforce will have increased outcomes for people. So the diversity assessment tool is one tool. It's an app to digitally assess the diversity and inclusion practices of organizations, and it can help them develop strategies based on where they are in their EDI journey. You can find that. I don't know if I can plug it in the chat, but we can share it after. You can find it as well on the Diversity Institute website. And it has been used so far to customize over 460 EDI strategies. We also have the DAT playbook and various templates to help companies identify opportunities to take action and create sustainable change. We have the Micropedia of Microaggressions, the 50/30 calculator. You can find the 50/30 calculator at the 5030tools.ca website. And if you visit, you can also access and find links to a number of other tools in one location. And so really and truly, these are all resources that helps organizations, to think critically about their commitment to building a diverse workforce. And yeah, just quickly, that we're hoping to build on the learnings from all our programming, Adapt for Black Youth, Adapt for Success, or Adapt model, looking at ensuring that the workforce will continue to be prepared for the future and have equitable opportunities for employment opportunities. So thank you all for today, for joining today. If there are any questions, I am happy to take them, or otherwise I'll see you in the breakout rooms.
Actually, Laurene, I think there are a few questions in the chat right now, and
Okay.
actually, depending on how many people we have, we kind of on the fly will decide. So I think we're going to keep it in the main room. So I'll actually just start by reading a couple of the questions in the chat. And for the people that I'm reading your question, please feel free to unmute yourself and, chime in if I've missed something. But one question I see is about what funding is available to deliver the program. I heard a little bit about employer subsidies, but I'm not sure if there are other funding that is available for the program.
Yes, I'm okay. So I guess I can speak to the program itself, and then I can also speak to subsidies. So all the iterations of the ADAPT, Advanced Digital and Professional Skills Training, have been funded through different sources. They've been funded at the federal level, provincially. One of our programs was funded, I think, in partnership with the BC group. Adapt for Black Youth was funded or is funded by the Ontario government. So funding sources really varies for the most part, it's going to be at the government level. Although we have had, smaller initiatives where we work with different organizations to deliver this program because the model is customizable. We can have adapt for FSC. Even
Well,
though I have to say FSC actually funded the ADAPT core randomized model as well. In terms of subsidies, that is something we've worked with different partners. Technation has been a big partner that we've partnered with to offer wage subsidies to employers. And in particular for Adapt Your Black Youth, we've also set aside program funding to support participants who may not be eligible for funding through Technation, whether they're international students on a work permit, that sort of thing. Hopefully that answers the question.
I believe it does, and again, people can unmute if they want to follow up and ask clarification. In the meantime, I'll go on to the next question that came up, which is a really good question. And it's, what data did you use to determine in-demand jobs? And is that broken down by region, particular area? How did you go about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A number of different sources. We've done research at the Diversity Institute, looking at what are the in-demand skills or jobs across Canada. And then we've also pulled research from different sources like was it StatsCan and other sources to compile the data on this. But we've also have been leaders on a number of these research as well.
I mean, if that's available and you're able to share it, that would be great.
Yeah, I can certainly see if I can find
No
the
worries. We'll also
research.
be, for folks on the call, Sandy and I are going to compile all the resources that are shared, and we'll make sure that you have it out. So even if it's not right now, it'll be sent out. Another question, and kind of goes into this region question. Someone asked about how can youth in Montreal benefit from this? So I guess, is the ADAPT model something that can be given to folks in other regions, other provinces? What kind of, can you share on that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we have a program targeting newcomers that's currently being run for BC, so Adapt for BC newcomers. So it's definitely something that can be tailored to different regions, demographics, and we'll adopt just like different learnings from different regions. And so Diversity Institute has a number of community hubs across Canada, and we leverage those resources to inform how we create a program offering for different groups. I'd say the one thing really just comes down to, I think, funding opportunities as well in order to be able to deliver programming in different regions, but definitely it's scalable, and we're able to deliver in different areas. We've not had a program in Quebec, Adapt in Quebec as yet, but we've had programs like the Adapt for Success program that was offered across Canada, regardless of province. So that would have been maybe something that regardless of where people are, they'd be able to access the support.
So can I ask a question? My name
For
is
sure.
and I represent Purple Awareness Initiatives. And based on these particular questions, and how can our youth immediately key into this program, our Black youths?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're in like the planning process for another set of cohorts. So I'd say, we can follow our social media, sign up for a newsletter as well. We typically share announcements on program announcements and that sort of thing through social media or newsletters. And then if you also want to be a partner, you can adapt. So our email address is adaptbap@torontomu.ca.
Can you please help me post it on the chat?
Yeah, yeah. torontomu.ca, where we engage with different community partners and share as well, or like sharing kit and all of that stuff. So feel
Oh,
free to
thank you so
reach out.
much. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for dropping that in chat. And Martha, I know you were the one who asked about Montreal and Quebec. So
Exactly.
maybe I think you can follow up with Laurene or this email and potentially get more information. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, BC.
No worries. Actually, we have a new question that has come in. Do you connect participants of the program to employers, businesses, and companies for employment? I know you do, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the process of which you do that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think one of the key outcomes or objectives of all of our ADAPT programming, so not just ADAPT for Black youth, is employment. Because like I said, we're not just training people for jobs that don't exist. The objective is really to train, upskill people, and then connect them to employers. And we do that through a number of ways, through direct outreach, working with employers in the community through our different contacts to, identify, hey, are you looking to hire someone? What supports do you need? Do you have a skill? Do you have a need for something right now? And then we typically look at our talent pipeline to see, do we have somebody that would be a good fit for this role? For Adapt for Black youth in particular, one of the things we're always doing is also a little bit of education for employers. So Adapt for Black youth focuses on youth that are 15 to 29. And so obviously we're going to be communicating that, if you're looking for a junior marketing coordinator, you're not going to get 5 years of experience for a junior marketing coordinator. You have to be realistic in what you're looking for. However, having gone through our program, we're providing somebody who can be just finishing high school, somebody who will have different, it's what do you call it, a sliding scale of backgrounds. People may be young professionals, they may just be finishing high school, they may be in high school, or doing their masters, that sort of thing. So we do connect in participants and employers directly. We also rely heavily on our community partnerships. So like I mentioned earlier, even in working with some of the more rural areas like Windsor, we relied heavily on our community partner there to connect us not only to the participants that are in Windsor, but also to local businesses who maybe they may not have a online presence. So having that kind of local touch point to help us, do a little bit of a matching, and then where we would add value is doing some of the screening for employers, ensuring that the talent that's being referred is really matching what the employer needs are.
Thank you for that. I don't see any more questions in the chat. However, I definitely would invite people, if you have questions, please unmute. I also encourage you, if you have, any resources that you may have or can think of, or organizations that come to mind, that you maybe want to share with folks in the room, or even with Laurene and Diversity Institute. Yeah, definitely invite you to share that.
I'll jump in, Laurene. It was really interesting hearing about how adaptive the ADAPT program is and responsive, and it put me in mind of an organization that I'm aware of called Venture for Canada, and they provide, just put the link into one of their programs because I think there's an intake going on now, but it's a program focused on underserved communities, and I think you have to be a post-secondary student who's a Canadian citizen to be eligible. But the idea is that you're getting placed within kind of small and medium enterprises. And so that idea of responsive, like how to respond to those kind of emerging needs of smaller companies. I think one of the caveats of this program is that the project that the company proposes has to be something that's a little like outside the box of what their normal stuff does. So like trying to promote innovation. So anyways, it sounds like the adapt like folks would be like well suited to that if they were like probably already gainfully employed, but like if they needed another step. So that one came to mind.
Thanks
No,
for sharing
that's
that,
great.
Haley.
Thanks
That's
for
great.
sharing.
Mhm. We'll make sure that gets shared out well along with other resources. And I see Sandy has dropped in again, just the discussion questions we had earlier, which again, Haley, thank you for kicking us off there. What innovative models or partnerships have you seen that advance inclusion and equity for Black communities? Sounds like we have folks from a couple of different parts of the country, so maybe there are things that are happening in your region that you may want to share.
Not to put you on the spot, Victor, but I know when you were living in Montreal, you were engaged with some like youth work while you were like in your student time there.
Yeah, there's one that comes to mind, but I'm forgetting the name. So just give me 1 second and I'll dig it up for sure.
Awesome.
Amazing. Well, I think this has been a very intimate discussion so far. And Laurene, I think you gave a really great presentation and shared some resources. If I could put you on the spot, Laurene, now, what of the resources you had on that last slide deck, is there one particular one that you really encourage folks to take a look at after this discussion that might help their organization or approaches?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I can be like okay biased about which one. I think all of them have certain utility depending on the workforce composition. If your workforce is not at all diverse, I would say check out all of them into it. If your workforce is already diverse, but you're a small organization, you kind of want to start building out some of your policies, your strategies, I think the diversity assessment tool as well, because you'll get customized strategies and stuff like that to start building out those policies, especially if you look into like sustainable planning. That's also good. The other thing I'd say, as I know that oftentimes when when a Black employee or a diverse employee is part of a workforce, there are sometimes things that don't come across as like microaggressions. So definitely the Micropedia of Microaggressions is a useful tool for organizations and employers to educate themselves and share with their employees as well around, what are some of the nuances when you're engaging with a diverse population, so that, you're creating a safe and inclusive workforce.
And actually, as you were chatting, some people shared some really great things in the chat. The Career Ready program has launched their Be Next program, which reaches Black students in the tech sector, provides wage subsidies. Oh, this is through Tech Nation, which I know you had mentioned earlier. And then Youth Rex, love Youth Rex. They're based out of here, York University. The Kit for Centering Black Youth Wellbeing. And actually, Youth Rex is a really good research and evaluation resource for youth programming, specific to Ontario, but still very, very great. And Victor, thank you so much. I see you added in stuff for Montreal. And then social economy through social inclusion. Oh, I've heard about this. Let's see. On African Canadian AI intelligence. That's really great. So we're going to make sure all of these resources get shared out. Oh, and I see Monica, you put your hand up.
Yeah, and I just threw my introduction into the chat because I
Hello.
came sort of the end of the introductions and I was like, I didn't want to interrupt the presentation. So thank you. I have two questions. Laurene, I was just looking, I taken a screenshot of the slide you had on the different program iterations. And I'm curious, in some of the other programs that you've had, have you looked at, I'm trying to choose the word carefully, but do is there a deliberate intention around ensuring that there's diversity in those programs? So I know a lot of times we'll do population-based groups, including like Adapt for Black Youth. And there's obviously a necessity for those. And sometimes I find when there are other programs that kind of have a broader scope, let's say for newcomers or career changers, that often, but not always, in terms of Black folks, like there might be one, or hopefully maybe two, but that there's often, like it's sort of often forgotten to kind of really make sure that there's a blend of folks in there. And I'm wondering if there was any kind of engagement around that for recruitment of those.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I think just in terms of our outreach mechanism, so we as an institute, Diversity Institute, working with, various partners from across Canada, we have cultivated relationships with people from different immigrant serving communities. So by the very nature of those partnerships, we've tend to seen diverse representation in all of our programs. So I think I mentioned as well, one of those programs on the side was the Adapt for Success program. Now, that program in particular did not necessarily have a race-based or a ethnic-based criterion. However, we did see that a significant number of the people who registered for that program were likely newcomers. They were from diverse groups, Asian, Black, etc. And it is because of some of the continuing issues with reaching populations and where the research is showing underrepresentation and the continued barriers for particular groups, why we have programs that are focusing on specific groups like Adapt for Black Youth. So it's not to say that the argument has been made that, well, if you have a program that focuses on everybody's welcome, do you even need an Adapt for Black Youth program? And the answer is always yes, because what we've found even with Black youth, and it's further broken down, like if you're a Black youth from the Caribbean, Black youth that has the born and raised in Canada sort of thing, they're just from continental Africa or first generation. There are certain nuances that comes with supporting Black people, and we understand, like, the history of oppression and all of that continues throughout. And I think this is where the sober report that I mentioned very briefly at the beginning comes in, because it really contextualizes where the gaps are, where the supports are needed, in particular for Black youth. But short answer to your earlier question is that yes, we do see a pretty varied representation for all of our other programming, for sure. And I think you had another question, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah, but I see Serena has her hand up, so I'll wait and ask that one after. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I will first of all quickly just mention that I'm based out of Nova Scotia and employment strategist with the provincial government, but my work is really community-based. And so that's why I asked the question around data, because looking at data for, especially Black youth, Black workers, I'm really curious about that, and, what sources you use. We have some initiatives here in the province, specifically looking at getting that information. And of course, there's StatsCan and so on. There's so many different sources. It's really interesting. But I did want to mention, I don't know if we'll discuss this in breakout rooms, but there are a few programs in Nova Scotia that I thought I really wanted to highlight. I'm going to adjust my camera so you guys don't see a cut off head. So the Matrix Code is offered in partnership with one of our employment centers, Nova Scotia Works. And that's a really great initiative in that it just provides a short-term training to Black youth And it's, again, that industry demand piece, which is so crucial, because I find that it is very important to have the skills building, confidence building, pre-employment component, especially for underrepresented groups. I mean, it's a game changer. However, it's the getting the link to the in-demand jobs that is also the critical next piece. And so I'd love to learn more about the ADAPT program, in general, and what you've seen about that. How have participants fared in having a certificate or having, some type of credential at the end of the short-term training period? That's really what I'd love to hear more about. If you could just speak to what types of certificates or credentials. I know it's not all about that piece, but I've seen in the past 3 years I've been in this role that it is for the program outcome to be like a crossing guard versus being, an entry-level IT job. There's such a big impact of the type of training offered. So just curious if you could quickly, speak to that piece.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the ADAPT programs, we do like badges and I suppose like micro credentialing. This ADAPT has been around since 2014. There is a lot of recognition and branding that comes along with that. We've worked, as I mentioned, I think with over 1,000 employers over the duration of our program. So, when employers see, participants, if they choose to highlight this on their LinkedIn, or, their resumes say, hey, I'm a graduate of the ADAPT program or ADAPT for Black Youth program, that actually has some clout, with employers we've worked with, and, continue to build employer relationships so that they are really working with employers one-to-one, collectively, so they really understand when they get an ADAPT participant, what are they getting? It is quite an intensive program in terms of the training, and also just providing the access and the support. But yeah, definitely we do include a badge that people are able to display on their various social media, highlight on their resumes and other platforms, and also looking into other credentialing supports.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that, and thank you for sharing, Serena. I see Haley actually dropped the matrix code in the chat. But I mean, if you have other things that you want to share, I think we'll stay in the main room instead of going to breakout room. So, the floor is yours, and to anybody else who wants to continue sharing. This is why we do this session, so it's really, really helpful.
I don't want to monopolize, but I do have one other example.
Yeah, for sure.
So Pathways to Shipbuilding is another great example here in Nova Scotia. So it's a partnership between Irving Shipyard, the province, NSCC, and there are other partners as well that I know I'm forgetting, like our local Nova Scotia Works, other provincial governments. Basically, it is a program where a cohort of African Nova Scotians and persons of African descent are provided. Thank you, Haley, with the support, the wraparound supports to everything from the pre-employment readiness right through to while they're at NSCC for the 2-year program. They receive so many different types of support. You'll see in the link that more about that, but it's all that idea of, again, combining industry in-demand jobs plus wraparound supports. The organization that the nonprofit that is the lead in the community delivery aspect is called the Africadian Empowerment Academy. they are really groundbreaking, I think, in regards to the training, like being an African-led training facility. And if you take a look at their website, you can see they're not just about the trades, but it is a major component. And to your point, Laurene, they now are a trusted partner. Like they have credential, because of all the work they've done leading participants from the training piece and the having a high success rate, the participants having that cultural component where they feel like a family and that they can lean on each other. And working in a field where, if I decide to be a welder at Irving, I'm not going to see a lot of female faces. I'm not going to see a lot of, African or Black faces, like people like me. And so it is to really help support the idea, that, oh, I actually could work at Irving, there is support so that I can do that. And so there's a lot of different partners that work together to bring that, that project to delivery. And whenever I hear from participants, they ultimately just appreciate and love that model where it is focused on supporting them, providing them with what they need to feel included and welcome. And there's one last thing is the supports are not just personal, but professional also. So for example, writing the RID SEAL exam, sometimes, for example, using the welder, I could be a great welder, but have anxiety around writing exams and not really know that part as well, and so there is support right up to like writing the exam, practice exams, you name it. So it's another successful model, I think, that really shows when you bring all the partners together and they have a strong relationship, the individuals, they come out ahead, they just benefit.
Good. I really appreciate the piece around, I guess, maybe not changing, ways to learn, but at least providing supports to navigate these kind of traditional learning systems or assessment systems. So that's really helpful to see so that people can still find a way to be successful, because it's those kinds of things that can continue to be barriers. Amazing.
I want to just also share that I know, at least in the GTA, Greater Toronto area, that we've, through Adapt for Black Youth and other programs, we've worked with organizations and partners like the Bolt Foundation, and they, I know, have skills training opportunities for people, for example, who are going to your point, Serena, around women in construction, entry into different skills trades. So that might also be a resource folks can check out as well. I've put their website in the chat.
Great. Monica, I see you have your hand up.
My extroverted self tried to be very patient and waiting. It was really great to hear about those programs. Thanks for sharing, Serena. And this is more just a question for folks like Serena, Laurene, and anyone else who's shared in the spirit of the question for this session. Bissy, I love hearing about the wraparound supports, because I feel like that's something that's often lacking or barely invested in. And I know oftentimes it can be challenges around funding. And I think Laurene, to something that I think maybe you had mentioned in your presentation, and that I've seen in my experience, around especially experiences of inclusion. Like we get people into the workforce. So in this case, we're chatting about Black folks. And I know you mentioned microaggressions. I mentioned all of us are familiar with that. I'm wondering if in any of these programs, if there's training or support for folks, Black folks or other groups that you work with, to help them navigate like the reality of the workforce, right? Because sometimes it's like, it's very exciting, you're in there, you're like, I've got the skills, everything's going great, and then you start to face all these different things and don't necessarily know how to navigate that. So even like practical scenarios or other kind of support in the training?
I can go first, and then I don't know if Serena and others want to chime in. That's such an important point to make. Definitely I'd see more so since I've been more involved in supporting the Adapt for Black Youth program. And oftentimes supporting Black youth who, for many, this is their first job, or they might also be layered. They may be immigrant, there may also be newcomer, and then this is their first job in Canada, and there's like, wow, what is this? Just even reflecting on my own experiences, I think for many of us who are from the Caribbean, shout out to the Jamaicans out there, but we don't have the same perceptions of race and what it means to be Black as how it's seen in for Black folk or students who were born and raised here. And so just some of the nuances around, wow, you mean to tell me that I cannot do the same thing that everybody else is doing? In Jamaica, I'm there, there are so many people who are successful Black people. You see this in everyday life. Whereas coming here, this is something that people may end up struggling with. And definitely we've had participants in our programs have said, hey, I'm experiencing this, but I really don't know if I'm just overthinking things, or, is it that I need to change or assimilate, that sort of thing. And that's really where the one-on-one and the personalized career coaching comes in. As part of our programs, everybody gets matched with a career coach. And this coach really just becomes their best friend, for lack of a better word, throughout this program. So it's not just during the program they're going through their training, we're helping them to prepare for, amplifying their job applications to employers. But even while they are with an employer, they still have that opportunity to connect with their career coach and say, this is what I'm experiencing, and talk through some of the strategies in that context. So it's not something that is necessarily built into the training component of the program. We've seen where sometimes when it comes on to sensitive issues like that, people don't necessarily engage in large group settings. And so we try to take that almost offline, where once they establish that kind of trust with their career coach, they're able to engage with those issues and to speak to some of the issues. And on the flip side, working with the employers to making sure that they understand, like, this is the group that you're going to be supporting. These are not just going to be, it requires some sort of mental shift. You can't expect that if you're going to, as I mentioned, hire a high school student, that they're going to be producing the work of somebody who is 40 years old and has been working since they're 20. And then you want to pay them a junior person's salary. And then you also have layered on that generational differences. I'm sure some of us here all know there are differences around people who are so-called Gen Xers, Gen Zs, and even just navigating some of these. And just, I think, helping employers to foster a curious and an open mind, I think, is equally important. I think too often it's always put on the employee that you're going into this space. This is how you prepare for the workforce here. But we've also done, and in particular for the Adapt for Black Youth program, that was also another key deliverable, is providing EDI training to employers and providing those opportunities for employers that we engage to access these kinds of supports and training as well.
That's great.
And if I could pop in, I would just echo what Laurene had said. I hear that pretty similar. And like you said, Laurene, it's an add-on to the training, because often it is that one-on-one support. Here we have certified career development practitioners. And so there's that link to our Nova Scotia Works Employment Centers where each person can have that one-on-one coaching so that they can follow, their plan. But to your question, Monica, around follow-up, so there are follow-ups, I might get the intervals wrong, at 6, 12, and 24 months. What I hear from our career practitioners is they don't always hear back. Sometimes you have someone who you have that real great connection with, and you hear, oh wow, like 6 months later, the job is going well. Some at the 12-month point, it's a little harder as time goes on to hear back, unless things have not gone so well, then they may be more likely to hear back because the person needs some supports and needs some help deciding how to deal with the situation at work. But we do have that in place to try to gather that info.
Thanks.
I'd like to add something here actually, because I'm hearing about like coaching, and it's making me think of, I'm doing some work right now around Black youth, specifically younger Black youth, like age 6 to 12, and trying to get them more interested in STEM. And one of the things that keeps coming up is role models and mentorship, but even just the idea of, how can you visualize yourself and build a STEM identity? And part of that is seeing yourself in others. So Laurene, your point around maybe coming from somewhere like Jamaica or even coming from continental Africa, where you can see opportunity everywhere and it looks like you and you can feel that and you understand it in your community. In Canada, and with these programs, it seems we have to be more intentional about role models, bringing people in, showing someone opportunities by, helping them connect with people in their community that are doing that type of work. So I'm not sure, Laurene, if that is something that's part of the ADAPT program. Serena, if this is something that you do in some of your programs in Nova Scotia, or Monica, if this is something you see with your consulting work. But yeah, I'd just love to touch on the role model mentorship piece.
Yeah. So again, just going back to the see it be it idea. So there are a number of ways that we seek to have role models from the instructors. That's the first touch point in ensuring that all of our workshop facilitators, not all of them are not necessarily Black, but they're a diverse group. For ADAPT for Black youth in particular, there is an emphasis on intentionality in ensuring that most of them come from Black groups, different Caribbean, Canadian, wherever the representation comes from. And a lot of times that's the first introduction to, oh, this is my first time meeting somebody who is for example, like Derek's work, Greer is a top executive C-suite level in cybersecurity, or working with folks like Nadine Spencer, who has her own company. And these, when they're demystifies this, oh my God, these people, we see them on TV, they're doing the most, we see them on the news. When you're in a workshop style model and they're like, hey, here's my LinkedIn, reach out to me, connect with me after, just say you're part of this program, it kind of, I guess, erases that fear level of engaging with people who are not only senior career-wise, but also senior from an age perspective that can be quite intimidating for some of our Black youth. So that's the first, I'd say, intentionality in terms of the instructors that we identify. Then as far as employers, we've introduced employer drop-in sessions. So employers have an opportunity to do, before some of our workshops, do a 30-minute introduction. They can speak to a topic they're passionate about, or they can share about their entrepreneurial or journey, or talk about how people can get into their workforce. So we have, for example, Kareem Perez, who has his own organization or company / business called The Tech Effect. he is an instructor in our programs. He also hires from our programs. So it's like a double whammy right there. And people kind of our participants get that opportunity to engage with employers. And then at the end of the program, we typically end with a speed dating / networking session where participants get to engage with several employers and the takeaways from there. We've also seen employers who may not necessarily be hiring from our pipeline currently, but like they've also offered to support participants through offering mentorship or job coaching, or just even setting up casual touch points as well. Serena, I don't know if you, or I think it was Monica, wanted to add something.
I can add something just around the mentorship and youth piece. So we have school liaisons here who, even though they work with the schools, are actually based out of our employment centers. And the whole idea was, how do we connect or have youth aware of thinking about employment, and job opportunities at an earlier age, so that by the time they graduate, they've already been exposed to, as you mentioned, Laurene, diversity of career options, diverse mentors, and just start thinking about the possibilities. And so the school liaisons have been around for around 3 years. They're new roles created as part of the transformation of our employment system here in the province. And I was at an event a week or so ago, and they were talking, a few of them were talking about their work, and they're really just passionate about working with youth and helping youth see for themselves the possibility of whether it's being an entrepreneur or going for a skilled trade or going to university. And so we have a diverse group of school liaisons, of course, because here in the province we have Indigenous, we have African Nova Scotian, we have Acadian, we have Gaelic, and so many other cultures. And so among the school liaisons, you do see the representation of diverse communities, so that the students can also see and connect with the liaisons. So yeah, it is definitely a critical piece, and that's why their roles were developed. And even though the roles were piloted at first, it's now been rolled out so that there's at least one school liaison for every school in the province. So that is something that just tells you that, it tells me anyways, that it's a really great thing for students.
I can add something. Yeah, I think in terms of organizations and corporations, a great place to reach out to is if they have any kind of Black employee resource groups. It also applies to other employee resource groups, and they might be called, different things in corporations. And I know even some of the school boards will have some sort of like Black student success or something, or something around teachers. Again, so sometimes it's finding like, what is it called, but definitely through the employee resource groups, connecting to those folks, because there are usually people there who, especially doing things with students and with youth, is very appealing. And then the other thing I made a note of, I think even on the individual level, within our network, sometimes, and I understand why in programs, when you're looking for mentors and coaches, you want someone who can like commit for 6 months or what have you. But if there's sort of workshops and there's opportunities that are kind of small asks, like having really concrete, small, single touch points that people can sign up for easily, can help. I think sometimes like it can feel overwhelming, especially if you're working full time and you've got other stuff going on, and maybe you're experiencing some imposter syndrome as well, of signing up for something that has a long commitment. But I think first having that like single touch point where they come and speak, or they do something virtually for 30 minutes, and it's like, we're just going to ask you questions. You don't have to prepare a big presentation, or, come and do a hands-on activity. Then at least there is that touch point. And then it also inspires the person, because they probably will have a good time, to want to come and, and do more and start like building that, those connections.
I think we only have a few minutes left. I'm actually so just amazed and impressed at the conversation that we've been able to have over the last 90 minutes almost. Just shows how much people are able to share and all of the great resources and thoughts. And thank you for Haley and everybody who's been dropping all the links and just listening in and providing all of that. Again, Sandy and I will make sure that we kind of do like a cute little one-pager report back with all of these resources and the things we heard. And I encourage you to, find each other on LinkedIn. I've already found most of you on LinkedIn, so you can go ahead and do the same, and maybe keep these conversations and connections going in other ways. I think to be able to meet people from Nova Scotia, Ontario, and other places, and be able to share these kinds of resources is something that we really hope to achieve in these peer learning groups. With that, I think, Sandy, we have a quick little poll that we'll just launch. It's just something we do at the end of every session. It's very short, and it just helps us to understand, if we're providing value by hosting these sessions. I know they can feel a little bit different because we're calling on folks to share resources versus just giving things out. But again, this is a format that we've been trying out for the past couple of years now, and just want to continue making sure it's valuable for folks. And yes, thank you for a great conversation. And if anybody has any last minute thoughts, feel free to share as you're filling out that poll.
Just the question. I find this really helpful to learn about what's happening, especially in other areas. Do you plan to continue with just an opportunity to get together and talk about what's happening? Any plans for the future for these type of discussions?
I'm gonna hope so, and I think Ellie is hoping so too over at Future Skills Center. They're really our partners and kind of help us drive and also decide what kind of topics we focus on. I know we have conversations about diverse communities. There's one coming up later in the year around Indigenous communities, but hopefully, and would love to host another conversation on this. And Serena, if you weren't able to attend the webinar that took place last week, which was on the same conversation, there is a recording available, and I think that will be shared out on the FSC newsletter.
It will be shared for the people who registered for the event.
Oh,
but I'm happy
okay,
to-
sorry. Okay.
Happy to share the link here as well if you
Okay.
registered, Serena. I can send it right now.
Perfect. Thank you for catching that. But it was a great session, I think, and it really kind of tied into the conversation that we had today. And yes, thank you for the session. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Hope to see you again in some other way.